If you were a trainer, you probably don't want to make your training boring. But unfortunately, some topics are boring. Some topics have so much information, they require us to go into lecture mode. It can be things like product knowledge training, training new systems and processes, even onboarding training. But if we want to get out of lecture mode and make any training more interesting and interactive, it all starts with one simple question. And that question is, what do I want people to do? If you are not asking this question, you're probably asking a different question, which is, what do I want people to know? There is a big difference between these two questions. If we focus more on what we want people to know, then we go into lecture mode. We share lots of information. We talk for so long that they fall asleep and then they leave the training and forget everything. But if instead we focus more on what we want people to do, then we step back. We give them more activities. We let them practice and try and ask questions. And our training becomes more interactive, more interesting, and they actually learn a lot more as well. So let's take a little example. This is your company's SUKY system. And it's your job as a trainer to train new hires on how to use this system. Now, this system has 15 different functions in total, and your job is to help them know what those different functions are, help them know how to create their own user profile, help them know how to track their KPIs, and also help them know how to process their expenses using the expense report function. Now, if you focus more on what you want them to know, your training will go a little bit like this. So, this is the SUKY system. This is your user profile. And this is your user profile information. This is where we track expenses, track KPIs. This is where we track expenses. There are 15 different functions in the system in total. The first function is, and so on. And as you can see, it gets pretty boring. If instead we focus on what we want learners to do, then the training becomes a lot different. For example, instead of telling them all of the different functions, we can give them an activity and say to them, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. In your groups, open up the system, play about, and see if you can list all of the 15 different functions in the system. And at the end of the activity, they'll have all got some different functions, but altogether, they'll have probably found all of the different functions. If instead of telling them, this is your user profile, you could instead focus on an activity where they create their user profile and give them some time to open it up, play about with the system. Don't even tell them how to create the profile. Step back and see if they can do it by themselves. And if they can't, then they'll ask you and you come in and help them at that time. At the end, you can even have an activity where they compare their different user profiles to see which one's better and which one's more interesting and so on. With the expense report function, again, don't tell them how to do it. Give them a link to the instructions on how to use the function. Give them a sample expense report. Give them a time limit and see if they can create the expense report in that time limit. And at the end, see who got it right, see who got it wrong. And the people who got it wrong, go in and give them some feedback. So as you can see, if you change your focus from what you want people to know to what you want people to do, the training becomes a lot more interactive. Your job actually becomes a lot easier as you spend most of the time standing back and just coming in to answer their questions. And for the learners themselves, the training becomes a lot more interesting and a much better learning experience.